Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and today we're actually talking about data storage because the next big data storage platform on the horizon could be your DNA. And take that, Johnny Mnemonic, here's what's going on. And if you haven't seen that movie, this takes me back, but if you recall, Johnny Mnemonic was essentially a courier. He used to store things in his brain, and I remember that his brain could hold 160 gigabytes worth of data, which I think he doubled, which was just insane at the time. I wanted 160 gigabytes back in the day. Now, that is way too small. That's how far we've come from the 90s, and here's what's going on. Now, this is coming from Gizmodo, and this was just a fantastic write-up. Obviously, as we know, the world has a data problem. Each day, if you didn't know, we add another 2.5 million gigabytes of data, and each year, the amount of data produced globally increases exponentially. This puts us on essentially a collision course with a serious problem. The rate at which we are producing data and information is outpacing our ability to store it. So, for example, if every YouTube video we watched, every photo we snapped from our phone, and every document we saved on traditional flash memory chips, we would consume 10 to 100 times the expected supply of silicon by 2040. That is absolutely crazy, and that's where we're on pace for. I will remind you, we're about 18 years at this point from that deadline, so that's a huge thing. Now, what's clear is obviously we need another way to store data, and not just any way. This data storage needs to be dense, and it needs to be essentially robust. It needs to be hardened, and that's where DNA comes into play. Where hard drives use the traditional binary system of zeros and ones, DNA storage has 4 chemical bases. Now, these 4 compounds or chemical bases connect in pairs to create rungs on a double helix ladder. It turns out that you can use DNA to convert ones and zeros into 4 letters for storing complex data, thus obviously saving an absolute ton of space. Now, Microsoft is one of these pioneers in DNA storage, and they've actually been making some headway working with the University of Washington's Molecular Information Systems Laboratory, or MISL. The company first announced in a research paper that they just released that the first nanoscale DNA storage writer is now being worked on. They've made it work. So we can actually start writing data in the DNA format. Obviously, this is very rudimentary, and I will get to that in a moment. Now, Microsoft is one of the biggest players in cloud storage, and they are looking into DNA data, essentially the storage of that, as a way to gain an advantage over competition, basically due to its unparalleled density, sustainability, and shelf life. DNA is said to have a density capable of storing 1 exabyte, which is 1 billion gigabytes per square inch. Basically, that's a massive amount. That's larger than currently right now what we have is the best storage method in terms of density, which is linear type open magnetic tape, or LTO. Larger organizations still use LTO to back up, when most small and mid-sized organizations are still using disk to disk because that density for massive data is there. So, what do these advantages mean in real-world terms for you and me? Basically, the International Data Corporation predicts data storage demands will reach 9 zettabytes by 2024. That's about 2 years away. We're almost in 2022 now. Now, as Microsoft notes, only 1 zettabyte of storage would be used if Windows 11 were downloaded on 15 billion devices. Of course, that's their example, but studies have shown less than 1% of the population have currently adopted Windows 11, and that's a whole other podcast / video in and of itself. Now, using current methods, if we are talking about 9 zettabytes in 2024, the data would need to be stored on millions of those LTO tape cartridges, the current density that we have, or the most dense we have right now. So that is a massive, massive change. Now, obviously, if we cut the tape and use DNA, 9 zettabytes of information can be stored in an area as large, or rather, I should say, as small as a refrigerator. Some scientists say, according to this article in Gizmodo, that every movie ever released could fit in the footprint of a sugar cube if we were using DNA-based storage. Now, as promising as this all sounds, we are many years away from storing DNA, data. Ignoring the technical complexities of this here, DNA data storage is simply too expensive at the moment. A few megabytes would cost thousands of dollars at this time, and obviously right now we have slow write speeds, meaning you wouldn't use DNA for frequently accessed data. Think about a massive service like Amazon Glacier where you just store your data, and if you need access to it, you can get it. And if you want to turn on the gas, it's going to cost you a lot of money. That's essentially what DNA is right now. Obviously, this is in its infancy still. Researchers around the world are working to bring us closer to an era where the data we create and stored, basically on the very molecule that contains our genetic information, is going to be sooner than later. And I think that's really exciting, because think about this in other terms that is not really talked about in this Gizmodo article. We are spending a vast amount of energy consumption just essentially having these data centers everywhere as they are storing and replicating our data all over the earth. We are consuming a massive amount of materials. We are consuming a massive amount of electricity just to do this, not to mention things like cryptocurrency mining, which something consumes, I think, now more than the entire state of Washington's electricity consumption per month. So this is obviously a massive, massive breakthrough. The footprint that we would have, not to mention the lack of waste that we would create, would be absolutely fantastic. The ramifications of this are fantastic as we basically get denser and more robust storage devices that give us this smaller footprint. We're actually doing the planet a favor. And I think this is a complete win-win. So good on you, Microsoft. I hope you're able to do it. I hope everybody's able to do it. And I hope if we can store the entire data for the entire world as we're uploading this on a couple of refrigerators whatsoever, size-wise, that is much different than the massive data centers I've walked through in my life that continue to multiply around the globe. And that is your news of the day. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP, all of which have massive data centers around the globe that could be the size of a refrigerator. Same with YouTube, where you should follow me as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please stay private. Thanks, everyone.